Well, thank you for joining us today. There are a smaller number of people in person, but we have others also watching online as this event has been live streamed. My name's Alan Ware, and I'm the Global Coordinator of Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, and the Peace and Disarmament Coordinator for World Future Council. And I was honoured to be the person who nominated Youth Fusion for the award, which was announced on Hiroshima Day, August 6th, which is the Voices Gorbachev Shultz Legacy Youth Award. So this is an award established by Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World, which I believe is a cooperation circle of the United Religions Initiative, and it's to honour the leadership of Mikhael Gorbachev and George Schultz, who reached beyond the boundaries of national interests and borders of countries and geopolitics, and made personal connections to forge a process for peace, which has not yet found its full fruition, but has left us with a lot of ideas about how to reach again beyond the difficult geopolitical issues that are with us today, using personal interactions, using faith, using vision, and here we have, and this is a testament to the vision of United Religions Initiative and Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World, engaging youth, which is very important. So today we're going to hear a little bit about Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World and this Youth Award. We'll also have a short excerpt from an incredible documentary which is looking at the relationship that George Schultz and Mikhail Gorbachev formed and some of the issues that they were dealing with. And then we'll also hear from Youth Fusion on some of the very interesting, inspiring, creative projects and programs that Youth Fusion is doing to not only engage youth in these issues, but also to build intergenerational dialogue and cooperation, so that the inspiration and vision of youth can be combined with the experience of those who have been involved in this issue for some time, and that we're not reinventing the wheel each time that we're moving towards a nuclear weapons-free world. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'll now introduce our first speaker, who's Audrey Kitagawa, who is on the board of United Religions Initiative, and of their initiative, their cooperation circle, Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World, and is also with Religions for Peace. Audrey, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan, and good afternoon, everyone, from United Nations headquarters in New York City. I wish to express my deepest appreciation to all of the organizers and sponsors of this NPT Review Conference side event, where we are celebrating the Voices for a Nuclear-Free World of Nuclear Weapons and the 2022 Schultz Legacy Youth Award to Youth Fusion for their outstanding work for a nuclear weapons-free world. Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons is a cooperation circle of United Religions Initiative. It is led by Reverend Bishop William Swing, founder of United Religions Initiative, which is one of the largest grassroots organizations with over 1,000 cooperation circles in 109 countries, with over 1 million people engaged in peace-building work. The Voices Cooperation Circle is a community of diplomats, scientists, scholars, educators, religious leaders, and grassroots activists committed to the elimination of nuclear weapons. Through education, reflection, and action, it engages citizens and decision makers to become aware of humanity's deep resources of faith and community, and to act with courage as agents of positive change. It helped to start the Gorbachev Shultz Legacy Youth Award in 2020. The award is given every year on September 26th in a special ceremony on the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. The award continues the nuclear disarmament legacy of Mikhail Gorbachev, Nobel Peace Laureate and former USSR President, and George Schultz, former U.S. Secretary of State and co-founder of Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. It's important to cultivate successive generations in advocating for a nuclear weapons-free world, and we celebrate those youth groups and movements such as Youth Fusion, which has advanced intergenerational cooperation on peace and disarmament, human rights aspects of the nuclear arms race, innovative and interactive methods to engage youth in nuclear disarmament issues, climate action, and public health, which are all interrelated issues to the nuclear weapons issue. Youth Fusion has also established a number of outstanding programs and initiatives, which also incorporates elders and experts podcast series called Nuclear Collateral Damage, Conversations with Survivors and Experts. Their collaboration with numerous joint programs in which they take leadership with others include hashtag Step Up for Disarmament Youth Campaign, Move the Nuclear Weapons Money, Nuclear Games, currently being rebranded as Nuclear Fear, the 3D Nuclear Missile Interactive Art Initiative, No First Use Global and Don't Even Think About Starting a Nuclear War, intergenerational events via the International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament, and so much more. Youth Fusion has members in Europe, Asia, the Americas, Africa, the Middle East, and the Pacific. We give our heartiest congratulations to Youth Fusion for their work, which we are pleased to recognize. It is wonderful to know that our youth are actively engaged in global issues of such significance, and they lead the present and future with inspiration and a passion that shows they care about the state of our world and the well-being of humanity. I have been a member of United Religions Initiative for over 22 years, and am one of its UN representatives. I am co-facilitator of URI UN Cooperation Circle and a member of Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World since before the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Jonathan Granoff, who is to my right, one of our panelists, is also a member of Voices, and you will see him in the excised portion of the film which we will show to you today. The film, The Bomb, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, was created by members of my spiritual community. I am pleased to see its enduring presence as an important historic film that advocates for the abolition of nuclear weapons. I support all efforts that help to make this world a better, safer place, where nuclear weapons will no longer pose an existential threat to all of life on this planet, because they will be abolished. Let us work together to see that day become a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Audrey, for your introduction to Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World and to the Voices Gorbachev Shultz Legacy Youth Award, but also for your leadership in this area and for the wonderful work that has been undertaken by your cooperation circle, Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World. It's now a great pleasure for me to introduce Jonathan Granoff, who's the president of the Global Security Institute. He's also, as you heard, a board member of Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World. He's also a very distinguished lawyer who's played quite an important role in education about US constitutional law. He's had and still has important positions in the American Bar Association on legal initiatives on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. I believe he's also the United Nations representative for the Parliament of the World's Religions, and also represents the Secretariat of the Nobel Peace Laureate Summits at the United Nations. He has personal relationship with Mikhael Gorbachev and George Schultz, and was very involved in what we'll see today, which is an excerpt from the documentary movie The Bomb, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, featuring the dialogue between George Schultz and Mikhail Gorbachev. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan. I just want to make one correction. I have the title of Ambassador on Peace, Security, and Nuclear Disarmament of the Parliament of the World Religions, and I represent the Summit of the Nobel Peace Laureates. I'm representative to the UN of the Summit of the Nobel Peace Prize Laureates. President Gorbachev and Senator Alan Cranston were instrumental in founding the Global Security Institute, where I serve as president, and I'm one of the founding members of the Voices group. What's interesting of this Voices group is that it also has former Secretary of Defense William Perry in it, Ambassadors Thomas Graham, Ambassador James Goodby, and it's part of the world's largest grassroots interfaith organization that creates working groups all across the world of different faith traditions focusing on critical issues. So the Voices group is sort of the top down with world leaders and diplomats, but the real foundation of the United Religions Initiative is the interaction of people. And it's that aspect of bringing the global threat of nuclear annihilation to the level of people that you will see in this film. One of the most inspiring experiences that I've had in my life was seeing the humanity of President Gorbachev and George Shultz in working with both of them on the issue of the elimination of nuclear weapons. And it reminded me of the admonition of Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell in their famous manifesto, which they concluded with, "Remember your humanity, forget the rest. If you do, paradise is before you. If you don't, death is before you." And that's the choice that we have today. So these two men, George Shultz and Mikhail Gorbachev, looked at the possibility of our future in which the Soviet Union and the United States had over 65,000 nuclear warheads pointed at each other, radically demonizing each other in public discourse. And they decided to build a bridge of trust. To quote George Shultz, "Trust is the coin of the realm." And if you look at how that happened, it didn't just happen overnight. They had interaction at multiple levels of diplomats and civil society actors. I was involved in a lawyers group that brought lawyers from the Soviet Union to the United States and sent lawyers from the United States there. But it was bold for people at the highest levels of state to not listen to the cynics in the military community, in the intelligence community, in the pundit community, who were analyzing everything through the lens of geopolitics and say, let's see if we can meet as human beings. One of the most powerful things I ever read was the account by Ambassador Jack Matlock of the October meeting of George Shultz and his counterpart from the Soviet Union at the US mission, in which they laid out plans for the first summit of Presidents Reagan and Gorbachev. And you saw how they approached it almost like a business arrangement. What do we agree on? What do we need to agree on? What we can't agree on now. So that when they met in Geneva, they could build on what they agreed on. And what they agreed on, they embodied in their statement. And in their statement, and George Shultz was instrumental in this statement, they said, a nuclear war can never be won and must never be fought. And they also said, neither party shall seek military advantage over the other. And that point of finding common security, of finding common interests based on reason and building human trust, that's what ended the Cold War. It was human beings connecting with each other and using common sense and seeing their common interest. And that's what's lacking today. So this film is instructive on what human beings can do when we remember our humanity. And it's really inspiring to see two people who, it's fair to say, didn't just make history. It's fair to say they saved history.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for introducing the film. We're just showing an excerpt of it, about 15 minutes. If you feel inspired to watch the full version, or also to share it with others, you can find it on the homepage of the Global Security Institute website. And we'll be starting with the message to Mikhail Gorbachev from George Shultz.
Mikhael, you were dynamite when you were in office. You had imagination, you had strength, you had vision, and you changed things. And with your option under President Reagan, you changed the world. I'm in my 100th year, but I feel like a promising young man. Let me tell you a story about how things get started and the vital importance of leadership in making that happen. When we came into office in the Reagan period, relations with the Soviets were as cold as they could be. After they invaded Afghanistan, President Jimmy Carter cut off all relations with them. When I came into the job of Secretary of State, I worried about this because as Secretary of Treasury, I had dealt with the Soviets and made deals with them that worked and got to know the personalities and had some fun and one or two rather dramatic circumstances. So I was uneasy. I talked to President Reagan, who was surrounded by people who wanted to keep things down. And he gave me permission to have weekly meetings with Ambassador Dobrynin. If the purpose, we would stick to the purpose of getting little weeds out of the place before they grew. We had enough problems, so Dobrynin was glad to take part. So one day, I'm returning from a trip to China, and I landed at Air Force Base. It was snowing. I was lucky to land. And our phone rings. It's Nancy. She says, why don't you and your wife come over and have supper with us at the White House? So then they started asking me about Soviet leaders, because they knew I'd dealt with them in the past. And so I brought Dobrynin over, and we talked about seeing it drove off, and Rena was reassuring. Then we talked about Soviet Jewry. It wasn't just generalizations. He had names, places, incidents. Then we talked about the Pentecostals who had rushed in their embassy during the Carter administration. They were still there because if you expel them, they get killed. And what can it do? Reagan kept saying, it's like a big neon sign in Moscow saying, we don't treat people right. We don't let them worship the way they want. We don't let them immigrate. You ought to do something about it. I won't say a word. I just want something to happen. So we're riding back, and I said to Dobrynin, let's take on the Pentecostal project, see if we can do something about it. So we did. And after a while, I finally got a piece of paper back from the Soviets that I thought was promising, although I could see it had its problems. And I took it over to the president. I said, Mr. President, please don't call your lawyer. He'll point out the holes in this memo. But I have to believe that after all that's preceded this, and this is a pretty good memo, if we get them out of the embassy, they'll be allowed to go home and eventually immigrate. So we decided to do it. And we got them out, and sure enough, they were allowed to go home. And after a period, not only were they allowed to emigrate, but all their families were allowed. It was huge, 50 or 60 people. It was gigantic. Nothing like that had ever happened before. Of course, the press was after us. How did that happen? And Reagan would say nothing. And I always felt that two little things were done as a result of that. On the one hand, Reagan could say, I trust the Soviets to deliver what they say they'll deliver. And they more than did that. And they have to say, he said he wouldn't say anything, and he didn't. And they well knew the temptation of an American politician to take credit for anything. So there's just a little element of trust there. Trust is the coin of the realm. So that built. And I think it was part of the evolution of the relationship between two personal giants. Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. And they could interact comfortably with each other because they trusted each other. They knew that the other one would do whatever they said they would do. So that was a big thing.
Но особенно я хотел сказать, вложив все эмоциональное, что в моей душе существует, что хуже всего то, что в последние годы произошел коллапс доверия в отношениях между ведущими державами, которые, согласно Уставу ООН, несут главную ответственность за поддержание международного права, за безопасность, который по-прежнему обладает огромными запасами ядерного оружия и обязаны его сокращать, вплоть до его ликвидации. Это обязательство договора о нераспространении никто не отменял. Я с огромной тревогой вынужден говорить о милитаризации международных отношений. Это результат вот всех этих ошибок, которые допущены, промахов, крупных, опасных. Проблемы, конфликты последних 2 десятилетий, которые вполне можно было бы урегулировать мирными политическими, дипломатическими средствами, пытались решить путем применения силы. Так было и в бывшей Югославии, и в Ираке, и в Ливии, и в Сирии. Хочу подчеркнуть, что это не привело к решению проблем. Результатом стало расшатывание международного права, подрыв доверия, милитаризации. Милитаризация как политики, так и мышления всего. И в этих условиях говорить о движении к безъядерному миру становится все труднее. Это надо честно признать. Пока мировая политика не вернется в нормальную колею, пока не произойдет демилитаризация международных отношений, цель, совместно обозначенная в Рейкьявике, будет не приближаться, а отдаляться. Чтобы изменить такое положение, необходим диалог. Фактически отказ от него в последние годы был самой большой ошибкой. Давно уже пора возобновить его по всей повестке дня, не ограничиваясь обсуждением региональных проблем, по которым существует разногласие. В годы, когда мы покончили с холодной войной, мы признали, что помимо национальных и иных интересов есть общие интересы, прежде всего предотвращение ядерной войны.
So there was supposed to be a meeting in Washington, and the Soviets sent word saying they'd like to have a preliminary meeting before the Washington meeting. We said Reykjavik would be okay because it's isolated. Hofty House had a downstairs, and there was a little room on the side. That's where we met. The room was very small. Reagan's at one end, Gorbachev's at the other end. I'm sitting beside Reagan. Shevardnadze beside Gorbachev. That's all the interpreters. So it's very intimate discussion. We were there for 2 days, and we had real exchanges. And on the first day, morning, Gorbachev laid on the table all of our negotiating points. He was agreeing to them, all of them. We were astonished. We went back and talked it over our group. And then all of a sudden he put a condition on everything, that we have to kill the Strategic Defense Initiative. And Reagan had proposed this, and his idea was that people will find ballistic missiles, and somehow you have to defend yourself against them. And he wasn't about to give it up. So we had, on the one hand, huge amount of progress, including a world free of nuclear weapons. In the end, we couldn't agree on anything. We did agree in a separate negotiation that human rights would be a regular recognized item on our agenda. That was a breakthrough, a very important marker. Then we had the Washington Summit, which the INF Treaty was signed. That was first big breakthrough of reducing, it eliminated an entire class of nuclear weapons. And these were relatively short-range ones, which were very dangerous because the amount of time between when they're fired and when they hit is like nothing. And so the chance to defend yourself is minimal. That took place at Reykjavik.
После того, что было сказано, что ядерная война недопустима, что в ней не может быть победителей, и что она нельзя остаться в такой ситуации, что надо заняться всей этой нагромождением этих и избавляться от ядерного оружия. Думаю, что Рейкьявик – это действительно то, что останется в истории навсегда. Ибо не будь Рейкьявика того, что хоть и с трудом, но что последовало после него, как начала меняться ситуация и отношения, мы могли прийти такой, когда и ядерное оружие могло при его масштабах и вырваться из-под контроля политического. Поэтому надо было сделать. И мы пошли. Переговоры были интенсивными, очень основательными, прямыми. Были президенты, были министры иностранных дел с ними. И была большая группа инспекторов политических и военных, экспертов. Удивительно, что все как бы чувствовали, что здесь что-то произойти должно серьезное, что изменить всю ситуацию в мире, все. Обычно неугомонные представители прессы ждали. Точно так же, как и все мы, видели, что получается. Мы начали выходить и на договоренности, означающие какие-то детали. То есть все можно, решается. И вот когда вдруг появилась тема о стратегической оборонной инициативе, я и сейчас даже не могу сказать, что полностью убежден, что вот это как бы продуманная, выношенная идея. Получается, что вроде бы американцы не очень-то хотели и боялись. Ведь не зря же, не случайно Тэтчер сказала, еще один Рейкьявик мы не выдержим. Не очень они хотели, хотя по разговорах Рейган иногда даже первым говорил, мы должны идти к безъядерному миру. Поэтому это было самое большое потрясение. И вот драматическое продолжение этой ситуации выглядело так, что мы, договорившись практически обо всем, мы могли получить уже в Рейкьявике готовый документ. И все оборвалось. Это было, конечно, вообще... Нас заставило это очень серьезно думать о наших партнерах. С какими мыслями, с какими планами, какие у них расчеты. И особенно для меня было важно то, что Шульц, улетая с Рейкьявика, в беседе с журналистами сказал, что, к сожалению, не состоялось высказал разочарование в связи с тем, что прорыв не состоялся. Я за этот тезис надо было развенчать. Потому что мы так много сделали, действительно заглянули за горизонт, что там уже в безъядерном мире. Отдать такое на съедение, на уничтожение реакционным силам, прямо скажем, это было бы недопустимо и непростительно. Я сказал, все рассказал как есть. И сказал, что это прорыв. На утро Шульцу доложили, что я сказал, и он собрал тут же пресс-конференцию и присоединился в Соединенные Штаты. Это, конечно, надо воздать должное Шульцу. Он вообще играл весьма конструктивную и позитивную роль.
Okay, we're going to stop it there. There is much more intriguing material in there, and we encourage you to watch the full movie. And we'll put the link for those of you who are watching this online. We'll put the link into the Facebook chat, Basel Peace Office Facebook. For others, it's on Global Security Institute. And we'll also have a little bit of time in questions and comments to chat more about that legacy. But now it's actually time to move on to the youth part of this, which is what the award is all about. And it's my great honour to introduce first Wanda Proskova, who's one of the co-conveners and core team members of Youth Fusion, which are the winners of this year's 2022 Voices Gorbachev Shultz Youth Legacy Award. Wanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning everyone here, good afternoon, good evening everyone on Facebook. I think it's just an incredible honor for Mikhael and I, on behalf of Youth Fusion, but everyone at Youth Fusion, to be here with you all to talk about the importance of intergenerational dialogue and what we can do to support all the youth who are tirelessly working towards nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and risk reduction all around the globe. So I think I will just take a couple of minutes to introduce Youth Fusion, and then Mikhael will talk more about the specific actions and projects and programs that we run. And then we can do the Q&A. Beginnings of Youth Fusion. We are relatively new in the field. We originally started, or we emerged as a working group of Abolition 2000. So we are honored that we have Jackie here with us, the founding mother of Abolition 2000. But about 2 years ago, we felt that we want to go slightly bigger, also gain a bit more autonomy. And just do more. So we worked the whole summer of 2019 to come up with a website, new logos, new social media, and all of that, and really rebrand as a networking platform, not just for young people, but for individuals, regardless of their age, but also for organizations. So we work towards disarmament, risk reduction, and proliferation, but we also highlight the links between that field and sustainable development, but also building back from the pandemic and everything else. Our goals are pretty clear. Our goals are to inform, educate, connect, and engage our fellow students and youths, but also the not so young and all the organizations in the field. We work as a core team consisting of Mikhael, myself, Marjan, Nurjan, and Nico, who are watching online, and we're waving to them and then saying hi over to Europe. And we're sad they couldn't join us here in New York. So why we're doing what we're doing? So often we come on different calls or meetings dominated by the older generation than us, and so often it happens that we are the only young people there on that call. So we really wanted to make nuclear disarmament more accessible to all the youths around the globe, and I think I'm pretty proud of Youth Fusion doing a good job there. Also, part of our work is education. So we do a lot of roundtables, a lot of student discussions where we, again, educate young people. Because we are continuously finding out that disarmament education is simply lacking globally. So that's something that we are, as an organization, very, very keen on. We do not do this alone. We're incredibly proud of all the partnerships we have. PNND is one of the key partners of ours. We also work, of course, with Basel Peace Office, with World Future Council, with incredibly diverse set of organizations, including DocMine. Nuclear Fear now being rebranded as Nuclear Games. Nuclear Games being rebranded as Nuclear Fear. Incredible animated documentary that we have the honor to partner on. But we also partner, for example, with UNODA's Youth for Disarmament. Again, some of the programs were already mentioned. So really just a broad scheme of different organizations globally. The core team, the Hall of Core team, has also gone through the OSCE Scholarship for Peace and Security. So we're trying to stay educated and continuously not only educate the others around us, but also keep growing as a team. So I think I will pause here and give the floor over to Mikhael, who will introduce the key programs that we do.
Mikhael has also been the one behind the camera. Now she's popped up from behind the camera to the front of the camera.
And magically appeared.
And Mikhael, can you tell us a little bit about the programs? But just before you move on, Vana did mention OSCE, which is well known to those of us who live in Europe, but not so well known in the United States. It's the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And that partnership with OSCE and the Parliamentary Assembly is very productive in advancing common and human security aspects, just as the partnership with the United Nations is very much geared around common security and human security. So, Mikhael, a little bit of the Youth Fusion programs.
Yes, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Vanda, and the rest of the panel for your input, and we're perpetually grateful for all the support that we get. So I'm just there's been a lot of ground covered already, so I'll try and fill in the gaps. So we've mentioned a few events already, and I think our events are particularly, we like to have a lot of youth representation, and we really focus on that. And we also always make sure to have a few people who are more seasoned in the field to promote one of our core values of intergenerational dialogue. So I think through our events and all of our projects, we really do practice what we preach, which is intergenerational dialogue, an interdisciplinary approach, as well as an intersectional approach. And I'll give you one example from the recent event we had to celebrate International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament, where we gave the floor to women leaders from the Global South to talk about their role in peace and disarmament. So we're also looking at broadening the network and bringing it to a global scale with Global South inclusion as well, because we don't see a lot of that. So we're hoping that the youth can bring new perspectives, more inclusion, because I think we've grown up in a more globalized world, and it's more normalized to us in some regard. And we also don't have this Cold War mentality. So it's really important to have youth representation at the table, and we are very strong advocates for that. Also, we're very proud to have had youth delegates sent to various conferences and events. For example, the MSP in Vienna not so long ago. We've also had youth representatives in Westminster in the UK, in Geneva, and also in Basel for the PACE Awards. So we are very, very glad to be able to use Youth Fusion as a vehicle to get where we'd really like to be, because these spaces are very difficult to enter. Our podcast series is also very informative, I would say. It's not really content that I have ever found out there in the sort of mainstream. So we're all from academic backgrounds. So we are always mindful to try and make, academic concepts and, concepts that aren't really found in the mainstream media, accessible to people who don't have access to, for example, JSTOR or other spaces. So that's we're very proud of that as well, and we've had some really fantastic guests on there, and as well we've also had have interns as well, which we're very proud of too, because I think there's not so many opportunities in the disarmament space for youth to actually be in a more official setting to put something on their CV. So we are really grateful that we can create those spaces as well, and also provide a network and a platform for youth. So our interns are doing extremely well, really dynamic people, and I think the youth are a huge untapped resource within this field. And we've also been very successful with fundraising as well. That's also a part of the reason why Banda and I were able to be here. So there's a lot going on that I think we feel very accomplished at the moment, sitting at the UN headquarters in New York. So I think that's what I have to add, and I hope I filled in the gaps. And also thank you so much to Vanda and Alan and everyone who have really made this happen.
Well, thank you very much, Mikhael and Vanda. Just from my perspective as the Global Coordinator of Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, we have very much valued the cooperation with Youth Fusion on a number of programs engaging parliamentarians. And one of those is the Parliamentary Handbook on Disarmament for Security and Sustainable Development. I'll just say the title again because where the disarmament is framed as for security and sustainable development, not as a standalone value, which it is, but that it feeds into security and sustainable development. And that we did in cooperation with Interparliamentary Union, which is 178 member parliaments around the world. The annual conferences of IPU have about 600 parliamentarians from their member parliaments, so we've been able to organise events of intergenerational dialogue with parliamentarians on key aspects of disarmament for security and sustainable development. And actually one of our former interns at PND is now working for the IPU running this program, so it's been a stepping stone for that, and we'll continue. I think the next one we're doing is on space security and peace in outer space, and that's a cooperative program. So if you have a look on the Youth Fusion website, you will see a lot of the programs which they're running are done in partnership with some key constituencies to help amplify the work that youth are doing and to do the intergenerational cooperation, as both Mikhael and Vanda mentioned. And also, you personally can engage. If you see on the join button, there's actually 3 different categories. One is if you're 35 or under, you can join as a member. Did you already say this?
No, but it was on my list of the things to say. But it's
one is if you're an organisation, you can join as like an informal partner organisation. Another is if you're not younger than 35 but still young at heart, you can still join in order to be a contact and be invited to participate in the activities and be on the newsletter list. So there's something for everyone in Youth Fusion. So I do encourage you to look through the website, look through the programs and become engaged. Sign up for the newsletter if you're not already signed up for, because the events that they organise are superb. So thank you again to all the panellists. And now we open up to the floor for any comments or questions you may have on the various aspects that have been presented today.
I would only add that we do a bi-monthly newsletter, so I would strongly encourage everyone to sign up on that. We're sharing articles, podcasts, vast resources, but also opportunities of the programs that Youth Fusion is running. And I will also encourage everyone to check out our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. And it's just such an easy way to stay in touch. And we'll put in the chat for those of you who are watching on Facebook the links to Youth Fusion so that you can get connected and get in touch. We always we love to collaborate, as I think it's clear from this event, but just to hear from fellow youth, but also supporters. So, yeah.
Yep, Diane?
Yeah, hi. All right, Diane Perlman. I'm here representing Transcend International, a network of conflict transformation professionals. That was founded by Johan Galtung, who was the originator of the idea of the OSCE, by the way. So 2 associations and then a question. So I noticed George Schultz, he mentioned that he brought up the issue of Soviet Jewry. So in 1971, I was 21, I went to the Soviet Union to try to connect with Soviet Jews who were trying to immigrate, and I was expelled from the Soviet Union. And I went back in 1984 as a citizen diplomat with the Association of Humanistic Psychology, and the KGB found me. So I had 2 experiences in the KGB. Anyway, it's a great film, and I look forward. That was a great segment. So my question is, you mentioned, and I've had conversations with several of you about this. I'm just asking you about social sciences and conflict analysis, and I'm representing Transcend now, but in past NPTs I've represented Psychologists for Social Responsibility, Mediators Beyond Borders, and the School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. So I'm looking on organizing a network of people in the field of conflict transformation, also known as second order change, which is dealing with the underlying conflicts in the relationship system, in addition to eliminating the weapons, but to reduce tension. So do you have anybody working on that, or people in social sciences dealing on that level?
We have a couple of interns that are doing academic research on this, so we can absolutely get in touch. That'd be lovely. We've got Ivan, who is one of our current members, who's working on the Russia-US dialogues among youth. So that is a very exciting project that we're excited to launch, I think, in the fall. So stay tuned.
I started in the 80s. I was a speaker for Physicians for Social Responsibility, and I did slideshows on the image of the enemy, and I had all these political cartoons against the Soviet Union, and I could do them all today. The same slideshow I did 35 years ago, I could do it today.
Mikhael, did you want to add anything to that?
I think Vanda covered it, because I was also thinking of mentioning Ivan. Yeah, maybe I think we could afterwards get in touch and maybe link you in an email with a chain with him, because he's very enthusiastic about these issues. So.
I mean, I can add a little bit more, because the conflict resolution approach in international security is very much the approach of common security. It's also very much the approach of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. That's what it was established for a common security approach to the issues in Europe, and that Europe extended to all of the former Soviet countries, to the United States and Canada. And so that's sort of a different framework for security than national defence, for example, which is like a core or the traditional framework for security. These are not necessarily in conflict with each other. I mean, common security is also providing for national security, but it's providing for it in the basis of a conflict resolution approach, or using international law, using also the United Nations, which is a common security approach. So a lot of that is incorporated into many of the activities that Youth Fusion are doing, where they're doing them with OSCE representatives or in the OSCE context. They were cooperating, Youth Fusion was cooperating with PND recently in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, which was held in the UK, which was again putting forward the ideas of conflict resolution and nuclear disarmament into the final declaration of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And you'll see it also in the statements that were developed for International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament. There's a lot in there about conflict resolution, common security, as the basis for resolving these issues and helping to eliminate nuclear weapons. So it's reflected in many of the things that Youth Fusion are doing. Thanks, Diane. Yeah.
I wanted to quote somebody. Pope Francis, who is one of the world's foremost advocates for nuclear disarmament. He goes so far as to say that not only is the use immoral and illegal, but possession. But in his encyclical, Laudato Si', he talks about the issue of intergenerational solidarity in a way that I think is really inspiring and instructive to anybody with any moral conscience. And I just wanted to quote him, put it on the record. So this is what Pope Francis says about this subject. The notion of the common good also extends to future generations. The global economic crises have made painfully obvious the detrimental effects of disregarding our common destiny, which cannot exclude those who come after us. We can no longer speak of sustainable development apart from intergenerational solidarity. Once we start to think And this is where nuclear comes in. Once we start to think differently, to think about the kind of world we are leaving to future generations, we look at things differently. We realize that the world is a gift which we have freely received and must share with others. Intergenerational solidarity is not optional, but rather a basic question of justice, since the world we have received also belongs to those who will follow us. And I'm reading this because I want older people like myself to feel a sense of responsibility of promoting intergenerational solidarity. And one of the things that I personally respect very much of Youth Fusion is that you do respect people who have been around longer and have experience. And you're not about your identity as youth, you're about the issues. So that there's a lot of identity politics out there that say things like, well, you can't talk about youth interests because you're old, right? And that's not an issue of principle. And you guys represent the kind of attitude of bringing us together. And so as an older person, I want to listen to you because you're listening to the solidarity with older people. But older people we have to use our resources and our energy to support institutions like Youth Fusion. And that's one of the reasons why Voices gave you guys the Gorbachev Shultz Award this year, because you represent that kind of spirit. So thank you.
Thank you for those kind words. That's really, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think Youth Fusion is, we're doing our best in acknowledging the efforts and the incredible, I mean, this film we've just seen is this, we love building on what was built, and we love learning from these efforts and love recognizing them. So for example, the Youth Fusion Elders series is an example of that. It's a podcast and article series, for those of you who don't know, where we talk to Youth Fusion elders and we share experience, and it's all about a dialogue and how the two counterparts can learn from each other and make this road go place. So.
Thank you. Jeffrey, I think you had a comment or question?
Sure, yeah. So again, I'm Jeffrey Huffines, and I'm with the Coalition for the UN We Need, and congratulations on your award and the amazing work you're doing. And I'm very much hoping that we will be able to benefit from your contributions as the Secretary General of the United Nations and member states begin to plan for this Summit of the Future that's going to be taking place next September. And there are a number of significant planks or thematic tracks of this Summit of the Future that I think we could really benefit from your vision and your policy recommendations. For example, they're in the process of negotiating a declaration on future generations, and so there's a real focus on this intergenerational aspect to our work. Another key plank is the new agenda for peace and the peaceful use of outer space. And so there are a number of these thematic tracks that are perhaps outside the purview of some of the other work that we engage in. But from what I'm hearing, there are opportunities where you can make significant contributions in this arena here. So we're hoping that we'll be able to, join forces with you in the year ahead.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. And for those who don't know, the Coalition for the UN We Need arose pretty much from the coalition of civil society organisations that gathered around the 75th anniversary of the United Nations and ensured that there was civil society engagement with the governments on highlighting the core objectives and values of the UN as when it was created and what it needed to do in the current times. So there was both a government declaration and a civil society declaration adopted for the 75th anniversary. And I understand that the Coalition for the UN We Need is drawing from those two and taking it forward from there.
Exactly. And what do we need to do to revitalize the United Nations? to make it more fit for purpose for the 21st century. Particularly, I mean, already on our time horizon is the 100th anniversary of the UN in 2045, and so your goal, for example, to achieve complete nuclear disarmament by 2045, I think it's a laudable goal, and the question is, how do we achieve it?
Thank you, Jeffrey. So after the formal part of this event, I guess you can swap contacts so that and ways that Youth Fusion can engage in the process, particularly for the Summit for the Future, if you're not already engaged. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Good morning. My name is Christopher Spicer-Henkel, and thank you very much, Youth Fusion. I've attended at least 3 of these virtually. During the pandemic, I began a family. I have one daughter who's turning 4 in September and one who's 5 years old. So when I started that family, I was in the 35-year-old bracket. And I know that I'm at one tip of the millennial generation that I'm included. Thank you for the list and the events. They've been informative. They've been energizing. Rhonda, you've sometimes played the role of host so keen. And I am a member of the faith community, Roman Catholic. Thank you for that. Becoming an intergenerational work. I'm a member of Peace Action in Massachusetts. Peace Action is nationwide, and I've been trying to glean as well from the older generation where I'm at the younger. To put it to you as forms of a question, I mean, the satisfactions, I hope, of this award and its ties. It sounds like you've been living in the graces of that, both by means of the fundraising success and further steps have been already made in terms of inclusion. I'm open to hearing more about your strategic thoughts on that level. If you'd like to just share a little bit more how we can be in connection across the generations, either in that bracket or, as you said, the inclusion aspect.
Very, very briefly, I think Youth Fusion, we're doing really our best in bringing young people to the spaces that matter. So we're not just about placing them at the table and letting them take notes. We're really making sure that we can actively engage, that our members are being dialogued with and listened to and can actually provide valuable feedback. So I think this will absolutely remain one of our core activities. And that was also part of the fundraising, to make sure that we can send delegates to the MPT and we can have our own delegation, and we can ensure that young people are part of the dialogue and can contribute with their ideas and also knowledge and skills. So many of our young members have graduate degrees. They're really experts in their field. So it's not just like we've got the experts and we've got the young people. The young people are the experts in these venues. So that's something we're incredibly proud of, and that's something we continuously want to build and wants to grow. Shout out to our fundraising campaign. If anyone wants to contribute, it's still open on GoFundMe. You can find the link on our website because it is an ongoing struggle. And not to be hypocritical at the UN HQ, but it is hard for young people to set foot in this door. It is incredibly hard for them to gain new experiences. I mean, the UNODA internships are unpaid. That's, in our eyes, that's simply not okay. So also just helping people with that and helping them find resources and really helping them set foot in the door. Because the young people, I recently went to an event and someone said that the young people don't care about nuclear disarmament. And that's a trigger for me because it's just factually, fundamentally wrong. The young people are incredibly invested in this, but we do need your support to help us get started because it is a tough field. So yeah.
Rhonda, can I follow up this question with just a couple more specific forums that you are helping youth engage in? We've already heard that you helped youth to go to the meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in Vienna. You've brought like a delegation here to New York for the NPT review conference. We mentioned a little bit about engagement in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and in the Interparliamentary Union, but there are a couple of others which are of interest, such as, like Mikhael, you're involved in bringing youth voices into the Human Rights Councils. Maybe you could say just a little bit about that, because that's a very interesting forum that Youth Fusion is helping youth. And Vanda, you're coming back to New York in October. I think there's another youth event that you're doing here, so that might be of interest for people.
Sure.
Mikhael, do you want to mention the one?
So yeah, from behind the scenes, yeah. So I would also just like to mention that Vanda and I are extremely privileged to have been welcomed and empowered in an organization. We both started out as PNND interns. And it was such a great organization to intern at, on the floor of the UN headquarters. Yeah, but it was a great organization to work for because I think Alan just he never doubted our capabilities for a second, and he just kind of involved us in things that we were like, oh really, like I can be part of this process. So I had that moment when I was a part of the submission to a CEDAW review committee on the part of Denmark, because I'm half Danish, so it was quite a relevant issue for me. And I actually didn't know about the incident that we used, the case that we submitted to the review committee, which was the Tula incident where an American plane carrying nuclear cylinders crashed into a Greenlandic fjord, and one of the cylinders exploded and radiation spilled into the environment, and there's just been no justice served to the people of Greenland, and in particular women, because of the gender impacts of nuclear radiation. So that was just absolutely phenomenal for me as I think a third-month intern at PNND to be involved in that process. I was sending emails to lawyers and really being included in a very genuine way. People were asking for my thoughts on things. And that just never really happened to me before. I've had internships before where I was just getting coffee and sort of, tagged along to events and just running around for people. But I think to wrap this up, it's important, making a space for young people is one thing, but actually having that aspect of genuine inclusion is a complete other thing. Because young people have so much energy and so much drive, and we really have the time. We don't have kids to take care of for the most part. We don't have, we can travel and go somewhere for a month or whatever. We are quite flexible, and I think we're really willing and passionate about what we do and what we're contributing, and we're so eager to learn. We're very, very eager to learn. So I think genuine inclusion in these spaces is so important, and mentorship, because a lot of us are just have imposter syndrome and are quite insecure, to be honest, and we need guidance, and Vanda and I have just been so privileged to have great mentors such as Alan to help us along the way and to genuinely include us and mentor us. So that's important.
Thanks, Mikhael. I'll just add a little bit of context for that. So what Mikhael is talking about is in the human rights committees, and in this case it was the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is one of the committees overseeing obligations of countries under their human rights agreements. And in 2018, the UN Human Rights Committee adopted a general comment on the right to life, which is under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and said that the threat or use of nuclear weapons is a violation of the right to life, and that states have obligations to ensure adequate reparations for any damage that has been done from the production and use and testing of nuclear weapons. So here was one incident of nuclear weapons that had been destroyed through this accident at this American Air Force base up in Greenland, and it was in the periodic review, it was Denmark's turn. So it was an opportunity to bring this. I don't think Denmark expected that something like this would happen, that they would be confronted, in Geneva with young people like Mikhael arguing that they had a legal responsibility to the women and children of Greenland due to this incident a number of years ago. And as Mikhael indicated, she brought in key legal experts like Ian Anderson from here in New York, who had actually led the case on this issue in the Human Rights Commission, but hadn't got very far, European Court of Human Rights, sorry. And so there was legal expertise there as well as the incident. And Youth Fusion did a fantastic job in raising the issue and then also publicising it with a follow-up event that educated a lot of Danish people who didn't know about this incident. Yeah. Thanks. Vanda, do you want to mention what's happening in New York in October? You're coming back here for a youth event.
Yes, I was very lucky to be selected one of the 25 Leaders for Future by UNODA's Leaders for Disarmament initiative. So that's been an incredible couple of months. We're doing workshop series, but also are now developing our own projects. So we are really honored to be coming back in October, the week before Disarmament Week starts, to present our projects and to learn more about the UN system and the disarmament efforts. So I've been very, very honored to be a part of that. But I would also just like to follow up on the partnerships and that question. It's not just about, the big names, the OSCE, the UN, the IPU. Of course, we're incredibly honored to be here and to be part of those spaces, but let's not forget about the civil society and their efforts. So in our partnerships, for example, the Basel Peace Office and the Pacey Awards, we've been so lucky to contribute and to just empower more youths to become active, and that's been so rewarding to us as well, because there's just so many young people doing amazing things, and we're here ready to root for them.
Thanks, Vanda. And PACEY means Peace, Nuclear Abolition and Climate Engaged Youth. And it's an annual award that's given by the Basel City and the Basel Peace Office for two projects, youth projects that are working on climate and or nuclear disarmament issues. Thank you. Yes.
I just want to say congratulations to the people who conceived of the award, and also to the recipient. I've been following you guys around for the last few years. My name is Benito Pearl Ford. I'm with the Center for United Nations Constitutional Research, based in Brussels. I also just wanted to say that I celebrate the intergenerational piece. I celebrate the transdisciplinary piece. I celebrate the intersectional piece. I celebrate your work with the Global South. I celebrate the emphasis on inclusion. And John, you have mentioned in other sections how important it is for us to engage the other global issues and that they are all so interconnected. And for us to repeatedly do this and to help the public understand how radically interconnected they are. You had also mentioned that you are focused on making sure that you translate the academic literature and the academic research into perhaps into content that is, let me get it, let me understand it, let me hear it. I also have a separate nonprofit that's Music and Human Rights Project, and we do the neuroscience of music, the neuroscience of moral sensibility, just to understand how that works so that we can translate this important work so that the people can get it. And I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you, Rodney, in bringing up the Summit for the Future again. Again, I said before in other sessions, I think this is going to be a transformative moment. We've talked about the inclusion piece, the parliamentary piece that you mentioned, Alan. Thank you. And again, that gets to, so how do we get to a place where we can transform even the decision-making processes around this important issue of nuclear, around the important issue of climate, around the important issue of COVID, around the important issue of poverty. They're all radically interdependent. And on that note, I wanted to know if your group is looking at the charter specifically, constitutional assessment of what the charter is, what the first words are, what are the articles that actually provide the opportunity to potentially amend the decision-making processes. And if there is someone, we invite you to come and talk with us, just to explore it. And it's very important. Sometimes I ask some people, do you know what the first words of the charter are? And for us to be here in the United Nations and talking about these issues without understanding this constitution, this the closest thing to the Constitution that we have with this treaty is very important. But on that note, I did want to invite everyone to our session on Tuesday, August 23rd, 1500 to 1630. It's on Africana perspectives. And using Africana perspectives because so often, not to silo, but to actually center. I'm an evolutionary systems ecologist, so sometimes I even start with Africana in terms of where we began. You know, as a species, and then begin to move all around the world. Our phenotypes changed, and now we're right here, and we're encountering each other as never before. But using that lens to look at United Nations Charter reform and what that means for democracy and human security and what those perspectives and experiences have been. So we invite you to come and attend, to share your insights and experiences. And again, doing this also in a way to give voice to a group of folks that sometimes, because the priorities are so in the immediate movement of survival today, they might not be here, even though nuclear, everybody's vulnerable, we get that. But the most poor people on the planet need to be taking care of babies and homes and getting water for the next day. Perhaps the attention might not be there, even though they will be just as vulnerable as anybody else. So I'll say, just in closing, for example, we have Anissa Haddadi, who's a fellow with our institution, a little bit older than you are. She just finished her PhD. And so she'll be talking to us about Algeria. She's from Algeria. And about the nuclear testing that France did. And very few people know about this. And we have a little there too. And so we're just going to go to different parts of the Africana diaspora to talk about what people are thinking and doing about nuclear. So we invite you to come and join us and share. And so thank you very much. And also, anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for your work.
Is it a virtual event or hybrid? Or
We're doing hybrid.
Okay.
where is it going to be taking place?
In this one.
Okay, great.
And online, where could we find it?
If I can perfect today. No.
Is it listed on the Reaching Critical Will nuclear calendar?
It's
Oh, sorry, NPT calendar.
Yes, it's there.
So we'll find the links there. Okay,
We'll insert the links, we'll give them, with them out today.
Yeah.
So.
Fantastic.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And do you have a response? There was a question in there about youth fusion, any focus on the UN Charter?
Yeah, I think so. One of our upcoming projects will be also run by one of our interns, which will focus on nuclear disarmament through law and the different legal tools. So, absolutely, I think that will be considered. But we obviously look at all of these texts from the nuclear disarmament perspective. And I mean, just every January we commemorate the very first UNGA resolution, which was obviously on nuclear. So.
Yeah, just to add a comment, I think we mostly work within the SDG framework just because it's a concept that's more in the mainstream, and conceptually it's a bit easier for people to, wrap their head around, and they know it. Not many people actually go and read, the dry policy like charter work. But I think now that we've really, established the conceptual framework, now with our interns projects, we're definitely going to get more into the nitty-gritty policy.
And I'd be remiss, I'm an evolutionary systems ecologist, so there's SDG 8, and perhaps one of the members of your organization might know that SDG 8, and it is about growth.
Yeah.
Okay? And so just to make sure, anyway, it's important, given that the international order is based on this paradigm of growth. And people think that we're going to be able to solve these problems of the planet with that framework. As I studied as an ecologist, and then I went to study economics, and I was sitting in the back of the room, and I looked at what the main idea was in the growth function, and my body literally shivered. I mean, the theoretical paradigms, that's many people that lived in the field and worked in the field. So if somebody is doing that kind of work, please tell them to contact me personally, and let's roll.
Yeah. No, we're going to do it because we have a whole list. We're going to, on our social media, we're going to talk about book recommendations. And one of them is Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, who talks about, keeping, it's basically a degrowth theory. And she also touches on militarism and, nothing in nature grows forever, so our economy shouldn't either.
Yes, and her daddy is kind of like the daddy of that line.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
Jason Pickle, I mean, there's so many people. I could not do this overtly when I was working at the State Department. I would do things like revise national income counseling in Costa Rica, which kind of got to it. But now people are prepared to listen to that bigger picture. And you guys have the baton. Finally, I say when I'm talking with younger folks, I said, I still have my baton. I've got lots of gray hairs, and I'm running with you, and running with you. And I'm learning so much. Please keep on talking to me, and I just want to be able just to, yes.
Thank you.
So one other quick response to that is Youth Fusion is a very dynamic and active partner of Unfold Zero, which is a platform looking at the different platforms. Like Vanda mentioned, the anniversary of the first resolution of the United Nations, which was putting forward the objective of the elimination of nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. Other days also, like the International Day Against Nuclear Tests, which Youth Fusion's been doing organising events with. The International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, which this year will be the actual ceremony. I think it is, Audrey. The actual ceremony of this award to Youth Fusion will be on September 26th.
That's correct.
Yes, and then Youth Fusion was helping to organise some of the other events around the UN High Level Week, but that also focuses on the processes in the UN to prevent war and to resolve conflicts peacefully, which are part of ensuring that we can get to a nuclear weapons-free world by replacing, the security relying on nuclear defence and deterrence with security based on common security, which is the framework of the UN and the Charter.
And on that point, in terms of the days that you mentioned, UN International Day of Democracy, September 26th. And if we are all here as many of civil society representatives, how do we create the democratic processes institutionally within so that we can realize this democracy that we so often talk about?
So thank you very much. One more comment and then we'll have wrapping up. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tatiana Spencer-Berry, and I'm here with the United Nations Foundation, or UNA USA. I serve as their Global Goals Ambassador for SDG 60. So I'm so excited that you mentioned that. I come from the Bronx, New York, so that's a pretty small community here in New York City, and I find it's really difficult to talk about these particular topics with young people that are far removed. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the challenges that your organization has faced? With trying to get more young people engaged, especially those that are gone intersectional identities. And oftentimes we say that if it doesn't directly impact them, then it's not that important or essential to our lives. So just wondering, what are some of the things that you all are doing as young people to engage?
I have an answer to this. So I think the nuclear disarmament space and also SDG 16 is kind of this very niche, space where you have to be very, very specialized and kind of stumble. Ooh, okay, we're in the dark, but I'll continue.
Did I do that?
No, I think maybe the room just, but so what we really try to do, as I mentioned, we work within like an SDG framework, so we really try to build bridges and make coalitions with other organizations such as people from the climate change movement, because there's a lot of youth engagement and activism in that space. So we try to kind of slide in the nuclear disarmament issues and make the connection between, for example, the climate action and by climate change and nuclear disarmament connection, because there are connections there. Also, we do a lot of work with connecting gender with nuclear disarmament and global health with nuclear disarmament, economics with nuclear disarmament. So we're really trying to fit nuclear disarmament within existing frameworks in the mainstream and engage with youth in such spaces to really try and get nuclear disarmament a little bit more out there. Because, for example, as you probably know very well, if we're spending massive amounts of money on militarism and weapons, that's taking away from global health spending and spending for infrastructure to help mitigate climate change. So that's what I think Youth Fusion is really great at, is that we're really building the bridges and we're really trying our best not to just work in a silo and have an echo chamber of nuclear disarmament. We want to alert people in different spaces that nuclear disarmament is relevant to their cause. And not that we have to dilute what we're doing, but we just want to try and get the word out there that, hey, it's relevant to you as well. It's relevant in your space.
I would also just add language barrier. Of course, we operate in English predominantly. There are some resources that we've translated, but it is an ongoing effort and struggle because, I think that's also something that we need to work on, just making sure that we're inclusive in that sense. Also with the podcast series, I think we will have some in French as well as Spanish and Russian, but that is an ongoing effort. And then, of course, funding goes. We need to be sustainable with our efforts.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, there is, for those of you who are here, there is a sign-up sheet going around, just so that we have, it's passed around. Thank you very much. Keep it moving around. And I'll come back to Jonathan and Audrey, seeing most of the sponsors so far have been from Mikhael and Vanda. Jonathan and Audrey, do you have any final comments you'd like to make for the session?
I have two. First and foremost, there is a World Academy of Arts and Science and the Global Security Institute are totally committed to advocating the framework of human security. And human security puts people first, states second. And I view it in terms of love people, use things, not love things and use people. States are things, people are sacred. And right now we have a situation in which we're pursuing the security of states without reference to the security of people in the states. That's become the paradigm. We have to change that framework. Common security is the multilateral aspect of that, the way states have to find common interest. But the framework is the human family because of the threats that are now global. And I think that people of your generation intuitively get that because you've grown up with these gizmos in which you're talking to people all over the world. And when I look at the membership of Youth Fusion and the leadership of Youth Fusion, it's not national identity, it's human family identity, and that's human security. And a person who's been a tremendous inspiration to me in that spirit is my dear sister Audrey Kitagawa, and I just want to honor the fact that this fantastic film, which you can see, you can even Google it, yesterday, today, the bomb, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, was something that Audrey was instrumental in putting together from her own passion, and she hasn't sought any Academy Awards for it, but frankly, it's more important than any of the films that I've seen that have won the Academy Awards because it puts a human face on a geopolitical issue, and that is the most important thing that each of us can do, is to put our human face on these issues. And so I just wanted to publicly honor you for producing this film without and seeking no credit. I've outed you, and I'm glad that I did it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Audrey, do you have any comments to finish up this session with?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much for this invitation to be with all of you today. And it's also very fitting that we are here in the House of the United Nations that was created with the mind of human security and peace. And I also wanted to acknowledge the very important role which communities of faith play in the nuclear weapons-free world. For example, I have already mentioned United Religions Initiative, my international spiritual family, the Light of Awareness International Spiritual Family. Its members have helped to produce and create this film that we saw today. And basically, it is the remembrance of the importance of advocacy and inspiration which communities of faith play on important global issues, and also in all of the work that we do. In the recognition that human life is good, is valuable, and that we are really articulating when the Gorbachev and Secretary of State George Schultz talk about trust in relationships. It is a recognition that trust, our credibility is sacred, our word is sacred, our credibility is sacred, and all of life is sacred. And so we must remember the return to our values and the original source from which we have all arisen, to which we will all return, and is the foundation of life itself. And that is to have the respect for each other and to love one another and to work united in bringing about peace, love, and harmony, and all those things that make life meaningful and give us purpose in living. So thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Ori. Beautiful closing comments. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for summing this up. Thank you, Youth Fusion, for your wonderful programs and initiatives and for the intergenerational work that you're doing. And thank you, all of you, for coming and engaging. We know it's been a tiring couple of weeks already, and for you to take your time to come here, we appreciate very much. And thank you for everyone who's been watching this online. We appreciate your participation as well. We look forward to continuing engagement, including the official ceremony on the 26th of September for the Voices Gorbachev Shultz Youth Legacy Award. And everyone have a wonderful, safe, happy and productive day. Thank you.